Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
There's something infinitesimally small that you're exposed to every day that can dramatically alter your chances of developing heart disease, high blood pressure, heart attack, stroke, Alzheimer's, cancer, and impaired immune function. And it's a risk factor that you can very much do something about. So let's do it. You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 153, the tiny invisible particle that silently plays a big role in how well you age. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to another episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're doing great. How's your confidence in your 2050 physiology? Doesn't it feel good to feel like you've got what it takes and are on track to create the future that you want? I like that quote from University of Utah graduate and computer science expert Alan Kay. The best way to predict the future is to design it. And confidence in your design abilities feels pretty good. Today we're going to talk about a topic that I had never really thought very deeply about before. It would pass through my awareness now and again, and I think, yeah, somebody should do something about that. But beyond that, I never gave it a lot of thought because selfishly, I don't have any respiratory problems, so I just thought of air quality like any other environmental factor. A potential contributor to the bucket of toxins I'm able to process before my stress bucket starts overflowing. Not desirable, not great, but not much more than that, and not much I could do about it. How wrong I was. Researching this topic was super interesting, and I found myself lost down multiple rabbit holes on the way to getting ready to talk about air pollution with you today. I hope you find it eye-opening and exciting because it's a major, for real major, contributor to aging faster and dying younger and in worse health. Whoa. There's a research group headed by a guy named Michael Greenstone called Air Quality Life Index, produced by the Energy Policy Institute at the University of Chicago. Their data shows that the average human on Earth's life expectancy is reduced by 2.3 years due to air pollution not meeting WHO guidelines. This is a difference of a total of 17.8 billion years of human life. That's crazy. AQLI says that the impact of a certain kind of air pollution that we'll get well into today, called PM 2.5, on a global life expectancy is comparable to that of smoking, more than 3 times that of alcohol use and unsafe water, more than 5 times that of car accidents, and more than 7 times that of HIV. It's a big deal. I used to believe that this was not good, but didn't really think I could do anything about it since I don't own a fossil fuel burning factory, other than my car, I suppose, and didn't really question how exactly my life was being shortened by 2.3 years. The answer is pretty interesting. Before we get to that, let's define what PM 2.5 is. PM 2.5 is particulate matter that is made of particles that are 2.5 micrometers or less in diameter. That's about 30 times smaller than the average human hair. A red blood cell is 1 micron, so they're 2.5 times the size of a single red blood cell. You can't see or smell these particles. They're not what makes the air look foggy or smoggy. They're invisible. The reason they matter is because they're so small that they can be inhaled and get into your bloodstream from the alveoli in your lungs. And they keep floating around in the air. They don't settle like big things like dust particles. They can even blow around the entire world, like from wildfires in Australia. When they float around in your friendly neighborhood air supply, you've got toxins running around your bloodstream to every part of your body. No bueno. PM 2.5 is kind of the main focus for that reason, but you can also measure PM 10, which are obviously 4 times bigger particles, but still very tiny. These are particles that can get into the lungs and cause respiratory damage. Another measure of air quality that you can and should check is called the Air Quality Index, or AQI. That's a number on a scale of 0 to 500 that's calculated using the concentration of particulate pollution along with ground level ozone, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen dioxide concentrations. Those 5 things make up a full picture of air quality, or inferiority as the case may be. PM 2.5 contains up to 200 chemicals, including volatile organic chemicals, soot, metals, and dust, and is typically produced by the combustion of fuel, oil, and wood from cars, trucks, factories, construction sites, smokestacks, and fires. The EPA says that the safe limit of PM 2.5 is 9 micrograms per cubic meter. AQI is on a scale of 1 to 500, but below 50 is safe and above 50 is unsafe, so obviously above 100 or above 300 is crazy unsafe. I never really watch the news anymore, but I have a vague recollection of in the cobwebs of my memory of the weatherman talking about air quality and having green, yellow, and red zones. What I remember is him mentioning air quality, quote, for those with respiratory issues, the same way he would give a pollen report for those who have allergies. I have neither, so I always thought the air quality report had as much to do with my health as the pollen report, which is zilch. I was so wrong. Here's why. We know that statistically, the most likely diagnosis to kill you early or rob you of your quality of life is cardiovascular disease. Then cancer, and then neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. All of those are heavily driven by metabolic disease, so staying metabolically healthy reduces your risk of all 3 of those main killers. Makes sense? We also know that you want to prevent weakness and debility from loss of immune system function, bone density, and muscle mass as you age. These are all critically important if you want to stay thriving in your later years. So here's the thing. The 2015 Global Burden of Diseases study estimated that 19% of all cardiovascular death, 21% of all stroke death, and 24% of all heart attack death was directly caused by air pollution. That's incredible. 1 in 5 deaths from heart attack and stroke is a result of air pollution. The study doesn't get into it, but plenty of people have a stroke and don't die, but their quality of life is drastically different. Imagine if that could be prevented by paying attention to air quality data, because it can. Studies show that short-term exposure to PM 2.5 causes rapid increases in diastolic blood pressure, and long-term exposures increase risk of permanent hypertension. One study showed a 36% increased risk of hypertension in people exposed to 3 years of PM 2.5 levels of 62 micrograms per cubic meter compared to those exposed to 14 or lower. Ozone and nitrogen dioxide can also increase blood pressure. Do you remember the EPA standard for PM 2.5? It's 9. So levels of 62 are really high. But one study done in 2023 showed that concentrations of just 8 to 9.9 micrograms per cubic meter increased risk of death from heart disease and heart attack. The WHO estimates that 3.3 million people die from cardiovascular disease caused by exposure to polluted air every year. That's more than the number of people who die from cardiovascular disease caused by smoking, diabetes, and high blood pressure. Acute exposure to PM 2.5 increases your risk of dying from respiratory disease by 23%, but increases your risk of dying from cardiovascular disease by 69%. And it doesn't end there, my friend. Studies have shown that those with higher levels of PM 2.5 exposure for the 3 years before they die are 87% more likely to have amyloid plaques in their brains. That's what you find in Alzheimer's disease. And what was considered a higher exposure was just 1 microgram per cubic meter higher. 1. It was an exposure of 2.3 versus 1.3, and the EPA limit is 9. The strongest relationship was in those without the ApoE gene variant that increases your risk for Alzheimer's. There are a few studies linking PM 2.5 to Parkinson's symptoms too. You can decrease your odds of getting Alzheimer's and Parkinson's by decreasing your exposure to PM 2.5. Not surprisingly, about 29% of lung cancers are caused by air pollution, and about 14% of lung cancer deaths are because of air pollution. The WHO estimates that of the 4.2 million premature deaths each year caused by air pollution, 11% of them are from lung cancer. 89% of them are from other diseases. Studies in the UK and Taiwan found lower bone mineral density in patients exposed to higher concentrations of air pollutants. One study found significantly increased risk of sarcopenia in both males and females exposed to high levels of air pollution. Sarcopenia is muscle loss, which you don't want. Your bones and muscles are less likely to weaken if you have low exposure to PM 2.5. Inhaled particles from pollution accumulate in macrophages and lymph nodes, so those are like white blood cells and then the lymph nodes that house them, near our lungs over the years, directly decreasing our immune system functioning. One study by immunologists at Columbia University showed that while we all take for granted that our immune systems just inevitably decline with age, like that's just what they do, a lot of that decline can be from decades of inhaling pollution particles which accumulate in the immune cells in lymph nodes, weakening our ability to fight infections, especially respiratory infections. Columbia says that preliminary study results suggest that even a small increase in long-term exposure to 2.5 is linked to higher death rates from COVID-19. So you can slow the decline of your immune system by avoiding as much PM 2.5 pollution as possible. Hey, I wanted to briefly interrupt to ask if you're curious about female bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, the kind that's usually started around the time of perimenopause. What it is, what it does, how it works, what it's like. If so, you should check out my Udemy course called The Basics of Female Bioidentical Hormone Replacement Therapy. The course goes over the pros and cons of using hormone treatment, which hormones are usually included with BHRT, how they're used, the lab tests that are used, some tips for finding a prescriber in pharmacy to work with, and how to develop a rough estimate of how much BHRT will cost you. If you've been wondering whether bioidentical hormone replacement therapy is right for you, it's time to close that open loop, stop wondering, and move forward with confidence. Enroll in my course today. As a listener of the podcast, you can get a special discount for the very best price. It's a no-brainer. I would just tell you the coupon code, but Udemy makes me change it every month. So check the show notes or go to www.healthcouragecollective.com/Udemy to find the special podcast listener discount code that's only for awesome people like you. Okay, back to the episode. According to experts like Dr. Carrie Nadeau, in low to middle income countries, the result of lots of exposure to air pollutants, especially to PM 2.5, is lung disease and deadly cardiovascular events. In more westernized countries like ours, it's more associated with long-term cardiovascular diseases like high blood pressure, atherosclerosis, stroke, angina, heart attack, heart arrhythmias, thrombosis, and heart failure. Oh, and cancer in non-smokers. That's a big deal and a connection I had never really made before. The air quality report doesn't just matter for people with respiratory diseases. Controlling your exposure to all air pollutants, especially PM 2.5, is a significant way you can reduce your chances of getting all of these common cardiovascular diseases, as well as Alzheimer's, cancer, and weakened muscles and bones. Think how much you could reduce your odds of getting those conditions if you focused on both staying metabolically healthy and reducing your exposure to PM 2.5. It's pretty cool. Unfortunately, we won't be able to completely eliminate our exposure to PM 2.5 or other air pollutants. Our main exposure to PM 2.5 and other air pollutants outside are from motor vehicle exhaust, pumping fuel at the gas station, smelters, power plants, industrial facilities, residential fireplaces and wood-burning stoves, agricultural burning, and forest and wildfires. Our main indoor exposures come from tobacco smoke, cooking with gas stoves, gas dryers, and gas hot water heaters, and fireplaces and candles. We'll get to a little bit of how geography matters in a minute, but if you were to make a guess at where in the US has the most PM 2.5 exposure, What would you think? Wish you could tell me. I would probably guess like Detroit or something, right? It's actually California because of wildfires. Dr. Nadeau wants people to understand that wildfire smoke is particularly hazardous to our health, especially when the fires burn homes full of carpet, upholstery, paint thinners, detergents, etc. All of that goes up into the atmosphere as these tiny 2.5 micron particles ready to blow around the globe and make a beeline for our bloodstreams. And she made a point that wildfire smoke from Australia circumnavigated the entire globe within just 4 days. I know when it seemed like all of California was on fire in August of 2020 and July of 2021, tons of smoke settled in the valley where I live in Utah. It was pretty intense. Wildfire smoke gets around. Something else that's personal to me is that there are tons of studies showing the harmful effects of cooking with a gas stove or oven, but I've never really known anyone with a gas oven, I don't think. I love my gas cooktop and cooking with fire, so trying to use an electric one, like when we go on vacation, is torture. My first thought was, well, I'd rather die 2.3 years earlier than have to stop using my gas cooktop. But I don't want to have decades of cardiovascular disease first, which is usually how things work. One study showed that cooking with a gas stove led to kitchen concentrations of nitrogen oxides that exceeded national air quality limits in more than 90% of modeled scenarios. They can also put off some PM 2.5s and lots of carbon monoxide. I'll put a link to a couple more articles about gas stoves in the show notes in case it's interesting to you. There's a lot of data and I'm kind of scared of it. The conclusion I've drawn from them is that when it's time to replace my gas cooktop, which that and the wall oven are really the only two original kitchen appliances that have lasted these 18 years since we built our house, so we'll probably need to go with an induction cooktop. I even read some articles by chefs and foodies who say that they love them and you can get great results from them, so no more flames in the kitchen. Sad. The articles all recommend that if you do cook with a gas stove to turn on the hood vent and open the windows to protect yourself. Other than doing what you can to reduce your exposure to known sources of air pollution, there are a couple of great tools you can take advantage of. I'll put links in the show notes to a website called Air Now and to the NOAA website. This is a great habit to get into. Prove to yourself that you care about your cellular health and are aging at an elite level by checking the air quality before you expose yourself to it. I put a shortcut on the home screen of my phone to the Air Now website and it saves my zip code. So I just tap it once a day in the morning and it shows me the air quality index. It has a nice color-coded system, but safe is below 50, which is green. It's been green for good every day except for one that I've checked it since I first started getting into this about 5 or 6 weeks ago. We had one yellow day. Today it's 44, so it's creeping up there. I'll be interested to see how it changes throughout the year. We get this thing in Salt Lake Valley called the inversion in the winter where the air gets really gross. Everyone dreads the inversion. We live in like a bowl, so sometimes in the winter warm air gets trapped in the bowl and cold air covers the bowl like a lid, and all that gross pollution in the warm air can't get out. And sometimes California's on fire and that settles in here too. Also plenty of places in Utah, Colorado, and Nevada might be on fire, so check your air quality wherever you live. It takes me literally like 3 seconds, maybe less. If the air quality outside is bad where you live, like above 50, don't exercise outside. Going for a run outside in poor air will for sure put PM 2.5 particles into your bloodstream and age you faster. And your immune system that day will be significantly affected. They've done studies in London of people who exercised outdoors in Hyde Park versus Broad Street, and the ones who exercised in the higher 2.5 air for 1 hour had significantly impaired immune system functioning for the whole rest of the day. If you have to be outside for work or sports or whatever on a poor air quality day, wear an N95 mask. I know that's annoying and it's not perfect because some will still get in, but it will reduce your exposure. Air quality levels typically tend to be a little better in the evenings too, so if you could maybe alter the time of day you exercise outside. If you're really geeky, you can buy a PM 2.5 monitor to put inside your home and check your indoor air quality. There are a few different monitors available for purchase. Most of us spend 90% of our time indoors, so knowing the quality of air we're breathing there is important too. Especially if you live somewhere where the outside air is polluted and there's a good chance that that polluted air is coming inside and staying there. Remember, you can't see or smell PM 2.5, so the only way to know if you have it or you don't is with a monitor. You can decide on what's best for you based on what the Air Now reports typically say for your zip code. As you're well aware, I'm a geek, so of course I bought one, and I've been having fun checking it every day. I just got a really cheap one called TemTop P10. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles of the more expensive models, and it seems like what I hear most doctors recommending is getting a purple air monitor for indoors. But so far, the PM 2.5 has been 1 inside my house every day, including the day when the air quality was above 50 outside. It's been 1 to 2 inside my car in traffic and 1 to 2 at work. I was really mostly interested to see what the air in my house would be like during wildfire season and in the winter during the inversion. So that remains to be seen. If you get an air monitor for your house and find that the air quality isn't stellar, you should get either a whole house HEPA filtration system or a MERV 13 or higher filter for your HVAC system. A portable HEPA filter will reduce PM 2.5 by about 40%, so you could get one of those little portable ones. I would think it would differ depending on your proximity to the device, but I'm not really sure. Effectively filtering out the pollution coming in from the outside is important in some cases. Then you can hide away in there from the toxic world like you're on some kind of emotional sci-fi movie. Have you seen Finch with Tom Hanks? It reminds me of that. Maybe you could build and befriend a robot while you're hermiting in your house from the 2.5 levels outside. I hope you've been able to see today that air quality directly affects how quickly you age in terms of immune system function, cardiovascular problems, cancer, Alzheimer's, and even bone density of muscle mass, even if you don't have asthma. Remember, you want the air quality index to be 50 or lower, the lower the better, and your PM 2.5 exposure to be less than 9 microns per cubic meter. The WHO lowered its recommendations for safe PM 2.5 exposure from 10 in its 2005 guidelines to 5 in its 2021 guidelines. So you probably actually want it less than 5 rather than less than 9. This tells me that if you have a way to measure and your PM 2.5 level is over 5, it's time to start taking measures to actively filter the air you breathe. We're fortunate here in the US to be able to check our air quality outside anytime we want on the Air Now or NOAA websites, and I would recommend that you do that. The biggest driver of recent improvements in air quality in some places is whether accurate air quality data is accessible to the citizens. The US, Canada, and Western Europe tend to have clean air to breathe most of the time because the data drove policies and advocacy. Only 6.8% of governments in Asia and 3.7% of governments in Africa generate open air quality data for their citizens. And Asia and Africa contribute to 92.7% of global life years lost due to pollution. It's so not fair. The 4 most polluted countries in the world are Bangladesh, India, Nepal, and Pakistan. Residents of those countries can expect to live 5 years less than they would have if they lived somewhere with clean air. Since 2013, about 59% of the world's increase in pollution has come from India alone. Among the 10 most polluted countries in the world are the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, and the Republic of the Congo. According to the University of Chicago's report, air pollution is as much of a health threat in Central and West Africa as HIV or malaria. Jeez. Air pollution in China is still 6 times higher than WHO standards, but has improved by 42% since they declared war on pollution in 2013. Residents of China can expect to live an average of 2.5 years less than if there were no pollution, but that's still 2.2 years longer than if the country had not taken measures to reduce pollution starting back in 2013. The most polluted areas of Latin America are Guatemala, Bolivia, and Peru. Like I mentioned earlier, in 2021, of the top 30 most polluted counties within the United States, 20 of them were in California because of wildfires. Particulate air pollution reduces global average life expectancy by 2.3 years. Tobacco use reduces global life expectancy by 2.2 years. The impact of global life expectancy is 3.8 times higher than that of alcohol use, 3.8 times higher than that of unsafe water sanitation, 5.8 times higher than transport injuries, 7.6 times higher than HIV, and 23 times higher than nutritional deficiencies. I hope this is a topic that smart women like you maintain their energy to be able to work to solve for many decades to come. Thank you so much for listening in today. I think this is an important topic to be aware of. Next week, we're going to talk about dealing with something scary, uncertainty. Until then, prevent as many 2.5 micron particles from getting into your bloodstream as possible, and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.